Sige.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Sabbath.
Good morning.
We thank the Lord for this time that we could also again come together to study our lesson for our first day. Before we go, shall we bow our hands for prayer? Father God in heaven, we are so thankful this morning to come before you, knowing that we are nothing before thee, but we thank you for the promise that you will always send us the Holy Spirit to guide us and to lead us into all the truth that you want us to know as we prepare for the soon coming. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for asking a prayer. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I'm going to do the introduction, and I'm going to give the floor our two panelists, Ma'am Contamillas, and then followed by Brother Sam Priya, to our two panelists, Priya. Law and grace. And in this lesson, we will see the connection about the relationship of, or we need to balance the relationship of the law and the grace in relation to what from the book of Deuteronomy. And this has been an issue in Christian doctrine, even in the Christian world, about how to balance about the law and grace, because there's always a tendency that there's no looking or make it unbalanced. Emphasize the importance of studying this and reminding, because this is one of the problems of our church, not only in our church but even in the outside world. So that's why in our memory text, I do not set aside the grace of God, but if righteousness comes through the law, then Christ died in vain. So we can see here that the author emphasizes that we need to be on the respect of the truth. So now I would like to give the time to but before that, Ma'am Contamillas give us the time for Monday and Tuesday. We know that from the beginning there is the law is existing in heaven and also in this earth. And we know that Satan. Oh, I have a question we would like to give you. What is the what law that was broken by Satan? What is specific the law of God that was broken by Satan broke in heaven?
The law of rebellion, sedition. There's no specific in the law. Maybe the first commandment is not applicable in heaven. You cannot apply the 10 commandments in heaven. So there's no us of less sins because after sins and the last experience. You might disagree, but it's in the scriptures. So it's only way you can, only way we can know sin.
Okay.
Go to the lesson. Yeah.
Let's go to the lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not ask
Okay.
the question.
Because it's the law in heaven, and we know that the law is for.
Okay, let's start with her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's just part of the excitement of part.
Oh, no, no.
I'll give you the time now that about the Monday, Tuesday.
Monday's lesson is about law in Deuteronomy. Let me this one is very important. The Hebrew nation on the borders of Canaan. This happened, the borders of Canaan, God's chosen people. And finally, about to inherit the land that God had promised them. And now we have seen Deuteronomy is Moses' final instruction to the Hebrews before they take the land. And among these instructions were the command to obey the law. Now I will read Deuteronomy 28:58. That's the main verse that we have to talk about. It says here, if thou wilt not observe to do all the words of this law that are written in this book, that thou mayest feel how crucial obedience to the law was for the nation of Israel. In a real sense, it was the people's covenant obligation. God had done so much for them and would continue to do so much for them, things that they couldn't do for themselves and that they did not deserve to begin with. That is the grace of God. God giving us what we don't deserve. That is grace. And what he asked in response was obedience to his law. It's no different now. God's grace saves us apart from the works of the law. Therefore, we conclude that a man is justified by faith apart from the deeds of the law. And our response is obedience to the law. We obey the law, though not in a vain attempt saved by it. Therefore, by the deeds of the law, no flesh will be justified. The source of salvation that we so graciously command. The law is by the law is the knowledge of the sin. And what is grace? Grace is the forgiveness of God. If we sin, God forgives you. That is grace. We do not deserve it, but it is a gift from God. Deuteronomy could be seen as one big lesson in grace and law. By grace, doing for us what we could not do for ourselves, and in responsibility by this God and we do for ourselves, and in response we have to live by that. Now it's from on don't deserve it because it is a gift. The law in Deuteronomy. Now let's go to Tuesday. It is a hard word. It says Litovlak. Litovlak means keeping the law of God for our good. That is what means Litovlak. Keeping the law of God for our good. And the main verse that is Deuteronomy 15, but the main verse that I will read is Deuteronomy 10. Now Israel, what does the Lord thy God require of thee, but to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all and to love him and to serve the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul. To keep the commandments of the Lord and his statutes. Anything of that Tuesday. It says here that and they are given action
So we know that there was a big problem, and they were treated as slaves. Now, in this category or in this portion, we know that the Lord, in spite of their problems, in spite of many of them have really left, because I believe that after 400 years, remember that they were in Egypt for about 400 years. Many have died, but they knew those that were born in Egypt already. Many of them do not know anymore, and they did not know about how the Lord has put them there and how they were there. And they know that they were slaves, a big problem. And I'm very sure that because they were slaves and they forgot already about God, they really were really doing everything, even worse than what the Egyptians were doing. And they were in a problem for many, many years. But the Lord has really a very good purpose of bringing them there. God has a purpose. They were supposed to be alive, but because of their unfaithfulness, they became slaves. Now, as a slave in Egypt, the Lord still did not forget them. The Lord still planned to use them in a special way, because God has promised to Abraham and those others that he will continue to help this generation to be supposed to be alive. And we know how the Lord brought them out of Egypt with a mighty hand. We know all the plagues that were given to Egypt to show that God is really in control until the time that they were crossing the Red Sea. And you know that by God's grace and His helping hand, all those people that were going out were saved. But those that were pursuing the mighty army of Egypt, they were drowned. So this is how the Lord showed His plan of salvation. And we are very glad that we are studying this, that we should learn also our good lesson, that the Lord has really a plan for us to do right. Now, when they were there, maybe they were doing everything that the Egyptians also were doing. And we know that when Moses was leading them, supposed to be, that's why Moses was called to lead them out of Egypt. And we believe that God has really a purpose of supposing to make them alive, because you can imagine, they were there as slaves, but they were brought to safety. And there, during the journey, many of those nations who were oppressing them or trying to be against them, the Lord has given them the power to overcome. This is something. We know all the miracles that Israel experienced during their journey from Egypt to Canaan. We know of those miracles. Even the rock, they got drinking water. Even Moses was a little bit, I believe that he was so mad and with all the problem he has, that instead of talking to the rock, which represents Jesus Christ, that he beat the rock. And that was really, during the time of Moses, that was his great fault. But we know that the Lord has a purpose for this nation. And in fact, we believe that we as God's followers supposed to be also a part of this nation that the Lord has prepared in order to be ready for His plan of bringing them back to bringing them to heaven. Now we know that it was here very clear. Moses repeats the basic commandments to rest on the seventh day Sabbath. This is very important because one of the things that they have missed, or this is one of the things that they were not able to follow when they were slaves. So when they were brought to safety from Egypt, we know that we had that Sabbath, and very important. You know, I cannot forget this, and I hope this is something that will help us. How the Lord really showed how important is the Sabbath, because during the Sabbath, there are remember that they were being given manna all the time. They had, and they were instructed to get the manna that is just for the portion that they need for every from the first day to the sixth day. But remember that on the seventh day they were supposed to get twice. Okay, on the sixth day, so that they can have something for the seventh day. Yeah. And this is a proof. I think this is also one thing that we should remember, that we are very sure by God's grace that we are keeping the right day. Because it was very clear for many, many years that they were traveling. They have this experience that they go out every day. Those who got more than, they were rotten. But those who did not get enough, well, of course, for the every day, they were provided everything they need, they had. But on the seventh day, that is something, those people who did not listen to the instruction, they tried to go out, they did not find anything. Okay, so I think this is another thing that we can remember, that what we are keeping, the Sabbath is real, the Sabbath day, because from the time on up to now, the way that we keep the Sabbath, but you know, there is a plan of changing it. There is a plan that we change the calendar just to make us in trouble. But we believe that we know really, and we have to be careful that we still have to keep on keeping the right day, the Sabbath day. And the Lord repeats this. Keep the Sabbath, and not only as a memorial of creation, but also as a memorial of redemption. Okay, from Egypt. God's grace saved them from Egypt and offered them rest from their work. This is very important because, as we know, that they were brought out for safety and for a plan to go and teach and keep the Sabbath day. That we too now should do it. Okay, so this is a powerful symbol of creation, by powerful symbol of redemption and grace. So I hope this is very clear. A power symbol of redemption and grace. We are talking now of law and grace. Remember that Moses emphasized still the 10 Commandments, and that is especially keeping the Sabbath. Now we go on forward, and we come to not for righteousness. Well, you know, this is the problem now. I have met in my old age, I have met so many people that they just claim that, oh, what is important is just believe. Grace we are now, and under grace there's, but it's not enough. If we will find it in our lesson today, that it is true that we are saved by grace, but the work is never has never departed, or the work has never been absent from that. Not for righteousness. It is true because We cannot be saved by doing just doing something for our own good or for good of others. Other claims that as long as I do this, as long as I do something and believe of the Lord, they said, I will be saved. Is that enough? Is that enough? Although we are saved by grace, it is only through faith in Jesus Christ. But remember that there is always, in the last part here, I would like to read, there might be some other things that we would like to discuss. So I would like to give that time. It says here, the Lord has saved you from grace. Now, with His law written in your heart and in the Spirit, empowering you to go and obey His law. I think this is very important in our lesson today. Let us remember that it is not for your righteousness, because we are all sinners. And I would like to also think answer about that problem that we had in the beginning, the discussion. Let us remember that the law exists in heaven, because if it did not exist, Satan will not sin. That is a part. That's why we know that from the beginning, the law existed. That's why Satan sinned, because he committed something. So I believe that this study of ours is very important, and may the Lord bless us and help us as we continue to serve Him, because what is important is the way now we live, how we act, how we serve others, how we do everything as long as we live. This is a challenge, because remember, we are all sinners, but by God's grace, we are saved, and through faith in Jesus Christ. May the Lord bless us. Is my prayer.
I'd like to thank Brother Sam and Ma'am Bontillas for their contribution. I would like to, I think we have some more, how many minutes for our discussion,
20.
whatever you want
About
to
20
share.
20
And,
minutes. About 20 minutes.
okay, we have ample time to discuss what you want to discuss about. Okay, Brother Tante, are you okay now? You, because I recognized before Brother Tante and then Sister.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay, Sister.
You have
Now, I would like to ask Brother Sam, what kind of law basically existed in heaven at the time? Because you're talking about law.
Yeah.
the law is love, and love, everything covers the 10 Commandments.
Okay.
That is love.
Let me say something. The 10 Commandments has not existed in heaven.
Okay.
The 10 Commandments was given at the in the mountain of Mount Sinai.
It was only
The one that existed in heaven is the natural law and the moral law. Yeah.
That's true. When we talk of the moral law, it is now a part of the 10 Commandments. Still the same. I do not know how you believe, but I believe that it existed, because sin will not enter if there was no law.
There was law, but it was not the 10
Okay.
Commandments.
Let me
Okay.
clarify my point in that, because
Okay, Dr. Arapiles.
I will stop. See, the law, there's always law. In heaven, there is law. Like you said, I agree, there's a law of love. But the literal 10 Commandments was given not at the mount, but after man has sinned. So thou shalt not commit murder. Cain has murdered, and that's part of he disobeyed that law. But anyway, that law that we're saying in heaven, there is no divorce. There is nothing on the 10 Commandments. But even the Sabbath was instituted after creation.
Correct.
The spiritual world, they existed already before the creation of this world. So Satan, the Satan's sin, of course, is a rebellion going against the source of life, which is God. So if you say 10 Commandments is the only law, it's not possible.
Okay.
One moment. No, okay. Let me say something. The 10 Commandments was basically given to a nation. And remember that when a nation is organized, there should be a law, because the law is basically the foundation of the nation. If you don't have law, how can you determine the success and failure of a nation? The success and failure of a nation depends on the law. That's why God, I did not understand this too before. I said, why did God gave the law to the Egyptians? I mean, to the Israelites. And this is what, because the law is the reflection of God's character. He wants to bring the culture of heaven to the nation. But unfortunately, people disobeyed. So that's why there was a failure, actually, because people were disobedient. So everybody committed sin.
Okay, thank you. I just want to be clear on that, actually the Ten Commandments is really, we know that it was given to the nation of Israel. We know that. With a
This
special
law is
purpose,
moral.
special purpose to distinguish them from the other nations of this world and to make them as the head. It should be the one who lead out this whole world, but it didn't happen. Okay, God was so discouraged. That's why he rejected these people in AD 34, during the time of Stephen. That's the time of the rejection of the Jewish nation. We know that from 2300 doctrines of the sanctuary doctrine. Okay, rejection of Israelite nation, AD 34, because they did not meet the purpose, and that's why. Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, of course, we're saying that the Ten Commandments were given during, the Sinai covenant. But you see, that law was there. How could Cain sin when he murdered Abel? That means that thou shalt not murder was already there. Lying, all right? All those things that happened before the Sinai covenant, I mean the Sinai Ten Commandments, that law, maybe it was not very specific that was written, but I would still consider that moral, we talk about moral law. It may not be very specific, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not commit adultery and whatever, but those laws already made people sin before Sinai. So I hope we should not think that the Ten Commandments was only there because it was given in Sinai. But the spirit of that law was already there.
That's the point. It's already there, but it's not yet.
Can I say something else?
Okay.
In addition to what Ate Beth is saying, I would like to actually continue with that thought. The law is already there because God, if the law happened to be the transcript of God's character, how can there not be a law? Okay, starting in heaven. But then human beings did something that is more tangible. God is a God of an excellent communicator, and he wants to actually communicate that to his creatures. So he, in other words, then, aside from all of the physical laws, other laws, he will have to, as a nation, that was already mentioned by Joy here, as a nation, he has to give the transcript of his character in human language, in the form of 10 commandments. And from the 10 commandments, we know that the moral laws, other laws, the ceremonial laws and others, especially those moral laws that were to govern the nation of Israel were given. But let us not think that the 10 commandments was only given to the nation of Israel. They were the venue through which God's character will be known by other nations, by all the human beings in this world. It was just given to them because they were his special people. And it is through them that God are using them as an instrument for other nations to know about his character. So therefore, the law had been in existence since the very beginning. It has to be translated in human language in the form of 10 commandments.
Okay, we are clear on that. Do you agree that?
No, I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree because the Ten Commandments basically was given in Mount Sinai.
It is.
But
It is God's covenant.
but the one in heaven is basically just a moral law. It's basically for Adam and Eve and the angels. There were no people yet. Yeah.
Okay.
But Galatians 3:19 says it was added after sin. So when after sin, there's already, you don't have to write it. You see, prayerfully they communicate with God at that time, and they are very knowledgeable about that at the time. They were created perfect, so they can understand God even by their tongue.
Brother Bill, you have something? I saw that. Okay, brother. Okay.
Okay, I think this is really a crucial problem that we are having. But remember, Okay, for those who believe that it was written or it was given after, okay, in Mount Sinai only. Okay, that's true. What is important is you have to do it now. Okay, because whether it was given in Mount Sinai or before, what is important thing to do is now. Okay, that is what is important. Now, what I believe that God never changed. If God does not change, that means that what is upright and what is being taught now has been already existing in heaven. So that is my belief. Now, whatever you believe, it's up to you. But I pray that we should understand better and help by God's grace that we'll be able to understand and do what is right.
Okay,
If we believe that the Ten Commandments is standard of righteousness, then we'll never be saved. The standard of righteousness is Christ himself, and it's by faith.
okay, that's the center transcript of God's
Okay,
word
excuse me.
is-
Remember that when you look at the mirror cannot do anything, but it only tells you that you have something, maybe something in your face.
Yeah, that's why
So
it
if
leads
you,
to Christ.
that's why it is already existing. Now, if you do not want it, do not look at the mirror so that you will not be able to see what
It
you
always exists. The law always
Okay.
exists, even in heaven. But it only applied after sin.
Okay.
If there's no sin, you cannot apply
One more thing I would like to say. There is grace because there is law. If there is no law, there is no grace.
Yeah.
That's why.
And grace does not cancel the law.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
So that we are
That's why
going to.
there is already grace in heaven. That's why there is already existing in heaven.
Yeah.
There was law, yes, there was law in heaven.
There's always the law.
You know why it was,
There's law in heaven.
you know why I don't believe that it was given on Israel? Because Israel was we're talking about Israel. But if you talk about Satan, okay.
Correct, you are right.
Now, if you talk about Satan, it's in heaven. So there's already a law in heaven.
Agree.
Yeah,
We don't argue with that. There's always law. But the application, you cannot apply the law of the flesh and the law of the spirit. The angel, the spirit world, you cannot apply the what are law of the flesh.
Okay,
Actually,
yes,
the law
we
is-
are now in the Ten Commandments. Let's move to the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, the Ten Commandments really that
The law of love.
covers not only for men. We know that it's not only for men. It's a lesson. It's also for the angels. That because there should be order and there is law embedded from the Ten Commandments. So we cannot say that this is only for men. It involves also the angels, even the unfallen angels.
All creatures.
All creatures. Oh, because this is if there's no law, there's no God, because God is the one. The Lord is
Same
the
thing,
God.
but when they're restored in heaven, how can you go apply? It's a higher level of law. You cannot apply anymore. Thou shalt not murder, but nobody, even how much you choke me, I don't
You
know.
will not die.
You see, so you cannot apply that. But it's always there.
We know that
It never be there.
God told Adam and Eve about this law before because we read from the spirit of prophecy that God instructed them from the very start about his government, his law, and its part. And even Adam and Eve instructed them, the coming generation from them.
Maybe we can say it's in Mount Sinai that God codified his laws.
Okay, that's
Okay, it is in Mount
Repeated,
Sinai that
repeated.
it became a code,
Yeah.
code of ethic, code of what is that? Righteousness. I mean, it's not really righteousness.
and
So it's codified.
It's the rule of living.
Yes, rule of living.
yeah. And we could read in Patriarchs and Prophets how the antediluvian people could memorize and how they have sharp mind and they could remember what had happened before them. They could memorize all of those because of their sharp mind. So it's not for them to reiterate them because they already know it because of their good mind.
Let us remember that human beings are deteriorating.
Yeah, that's the point.
Moral in heaven, we have that moral. What God expects us is that law is in our hearts.
Mhm.
But the tendency of human being, nowadays, if you go around and say, this is the law, what is your response? Is that anything written?
Yeah.
Where is that written? So I think in the situation of Moses during the Israelites, that happened. People don't listen to him because there is nothing written. Because human being at the time deteriorates, the mentality, everything. They are, what do you call that? They are considered to be with the world, okay? Yeah. So even in the past lessons that we have, that was the situation. It deteriorates. So let us remember this, that in our lives, okay, what God expects us is that law must be in us first. Okay? And to the coming generation, I think you can foresee this. In the coming generation, people will not follow the law because there is nothing written. But because it is in the Bible, it is written, they will start to recall again and remember. Let us remember that God is an omniscient God, omnipotent. He knows what is even ahead of us.
Okay, thank you.
When God created something, He would put a law, like when He created the sun, the moon. There was a law of nature, how they rotate and then to follow it. And therefore, so that there is order, because if you don't put any law there, there's no order. And therefore, when He created them, the law was there, but it was not in writing. It was only in Mount Sinai that it was put in writing. But it was never written before that. But the law was there. Because in everything. So that there is order, everything that He creates, there should be a law that would govern.
Let's go to law and grace. We are very much into law. Well, how about the grace now?
Yeah, the grace.
Relationship.
Yeah, we know that all things, that's why I told you before that we need to really balance the relationship of law and grace. That's why this is very, very important. That's what you mentioned. Okay, Brother Dante.
Pastor, what comes first, law or grace?
No,
Grace. Grace.
Parang manok yan at itlog.
Okay. I think that's why we need to balance it. I think there's no first and last. I think that's because that's part.
Ano yan? Egg and chicken?
Sometimes,
Okay,
yeah,
Sister Gina.
with these kinds of
would like
questions,
to-
sometimes we would like to say, well, if God is a God of grace and order, then it should be existing together. They're coexistence. They're coexisting. In other words, then, as what already had been mentioned by Joy earlier, without the law, how can you actually understand grace? So what we need really is an understanding of the relationship between the
That's
law
it.
and the grace. It's not necessarily a balancing act, but a proper
The
understanding
proper standing.
of what the relationship is between law and grace. So I think,
Okay,
yeah.
ma'am.
let me explain. The one in Monday's lesson, law in Deuteronomy, it says the law is the knowledge of sin.
Schoolmaster.
Now, if we sin, what will we do? We have to confess our sin and ask for forgiveness. And what will happen? God will forgive you. That is grace. That is, you do not deserve it, but God is giving you grace. That's why law and grace is together. So
Yeah,
when
cannot
you
separate.
sin, God forgives you. And
Because-
that is,
Kiss each other.
you
Yeah.
do not deserve it, but God gives it to you for the gift.
So there is no first and no last.
No.
Okay,
I would
brother.
like to read what it says in Testimonies to Ministers and Pastors.
Okay.
God loves the sinless angels who do His service and are obedient to all His commands.
Mhm.
But He doesn't give them grace. They have never needed, or they have never seen.
Never
Mhm.
You don't sin, you don't need grace.
Yeah.
So,
But we did, we sin.
Where sin is, grace much more abounds. That's according to Paul.
so it goes together. So one, this, Dr. Rables, that's the last one, and then we will.
For by grace are you saved by faith, says in Ephesians 2:8.
Yeah.
And that faith is not even yours.
Mhm.
So it is the gift of God. Yes, you were boasting. You're boast that when you say I have faith, now I can go to heaven. No, you still need Christ.
Christ died for us.
Okay.
And it's not that grace is like you said.
The center of law and
It's
grace
a,
is
it's
Jesus.
a gift for
And when you love Jesus,
And
because he
our
is
righteousness
gracious,
is
then you
beside
will obey the law.
See, but faith is imputed, like I said, it's close to you, but Christ's faith is imputed. Because our righteousness, he said, is as like filthy rags. It's
So-
deficient. No matter how much you obey the law, you still shall come short to the glory.
So when we get to heaven, we will not need grace anymore.
You don't sin.
We are already
Within grace.
the recipient of that grace.
That's already impacted.
Yeah, we already have the grace.
We continue to
Cherish.
glorify God because of His grace.
Yeah.
When we get to
That's right.
heaven, that's that sense of indebtedness. That really because of His grace,
Will never rest.
yeah, that we were able to receive.
Okay, the very last, and then we will.
I'd like to read what the author of the lesson says here in Teacher's comments on the page 24. The law is what makes the grace visible and concrete. Grace is what makes the law possible, bearable, and livable.
Amen.
I think what this means is our personal experience. We experience both law and grace, and they are inseparable.
That's it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's, I think that's the conclusion of this law
Amen.
and grace. And thank you for your participation. And it's been like this. Yeah, I like this kind of discussion and sharing. We have some good. Okay, Ernie, could you close our by prayer?
Thank you for this. Coming together, studying, with finite minds. And there's no way we can understand all the knowledge of what the Christ. But Father, we pray that you help us to continue searching the scriptures so that because in them find eternal life.
Mm.
Give us now as we go to our worship. We just do